Ronald slumped into his chair and sighed happily. It had been a long day, and he was ready to relax a little before bed. In the back room, his kids were arguing over whose turn it was to play the game console, but the thick walls of the den muffled it enough that he could tune them out. From the kitchen, his wife was humming something vaguely familiar. Ron was feeling pretty good. This was his favorite part of the day, and sometimes it felt like it was the 2 or 3 hours that he lived for. "Ronald," Helen called from the kitchen. "Is that you? If it's not, then you'd better call the cops," Ron said, digging for the remote in the corners of his chair. Helen stuck her head into the den, a mixing bowl in her hand, and a look of sarcastic bemusement on her face. "Har, har. How was your day, sweetie?" "Long," Ron told her, as he dug for the remote. "But thankfully, it's over now. How about yours?" Helen stirred at whatever was in the bowl. "Pretty good. Jeffrey made the soccer team. Hank was written up for fighting again, and I saw Judy at the market earlier." Ronald was really only half listening, but he nodded along to keep up appearances. He didn't really care about Helen's day, but if he expected to eat and sleep with her a couple of times a month, then he better pretend that he did. In truth, Ronald didn't care about much when it came to his family. His kids were okay, and he loved Helen, he supposed, but it had all become rather humdrum. He went to work, he came home, he ate dinner, he watched TV, he went to bed, and then he did it all again the next day. Even if it was the weekend, he replaced work with the endless honey-do list that Helen seemed to leave for him. It was predictable, but Ronald supposed that if he was asked, he would have said that he preferred it that way. Predictable was okay, but it was a little dull. "How's Judy?" he asked, reaching into the other crevice on the opposite side of the chair. "Pretty good. She and Mark just got back from the mountains, and she was raving about it." "Which ones?" Ronald asked, getting frustrated when he couldn't find his remote. "The Smokies. They went to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge and took the kids to Dollywood. Maybe we could take a trip this summer, Ron. It'd be nice to get away for a while." It did sound nice, actually. A hotel for a few days, some time spent in a place that wasn't Cypress Mills, eating something that was grocery to table like it was here. Ronald thought that sounded pretty nice, but he knew they couldn't afford it. Besides, hearing about the Smoky Mountains made him feel a little funny. Hadn't he lived near there once? Hadn't he grown up somewhere around there? He thought he had, but sometimes it was hard to remember. Sometimes it was like Ronald had popped into existence at 28 years old, with 10 years' experience as an electrician and a little over $5,000 in his pocket. He knew he had lived somewhere around there, maybe Tennessee or maybe Georgia, but he couldn't remember where. When he tried, Ronald always got the worst feeling of indigestion that he'd ever felt, and stopped trying to remember right away. "Yeah, maybe," he said, putting it off. "We'll see when it comes closer to time." "Well, the kids only have about another month of school left, Ron. I think if we're going to plan a trip, it might better be now, don't you?" Ronald leaned over and, aha, there it was. The remote was sticking out from under the corner of his chair, and he swiped some crumbs off of it as it came free. What a relief, he thought. He had believed he would have to get up and turn the channels by hand. That'd be a real mood killer this evening, and Ronald's mood was very important to him. He only had 2, maybe 3 hours before bedtime, and he wanted to make them count. "Let me check the budget, Helen, and see if there's any extra for something like that. You start thinking about where you want to go and leave the finances to me, okay?" She brightened up a little, leaning down to kiss him on the cheek, as a little of whatever was in the bowl glooped onto his shoulder. "Oh, Ron, you're a peach. I'll start doing some research, okay? Maybe we can go to the Smokies, too. Judy said it wasn't terribly expensive." She left the living room, chattering like a bird, and Ronald was glad to see her go. Now it was time for a little TV. The old Philco came on gradually, snowy haze turning into Jerry Springer as he panned through the channels. He had satellite, an expense he bore grudgingly, but was ultimately happy about. He got something like 500 channels, though most of them were garbage. 100 or so were music channels, another 100 were pay-per-view, and then another 100 were foreign language channels, though God knew why. That left about 200 channels of stuff to watch in a language he could understand, and Ronald set to looking for a movie or a show to hold his interest. He was swooping through the channels when he came across something that made him go back. He scrolled back through slowly, and as he landed on it, he heard a familiar jingle. It was weird, a strange, tinny kind of music. It wasn't a genre he was familiar with, but as the ad played out, Ronald found himself leaning forward to look at the picture, flashing on the screen. They were pictures of places he had never seen before, but somehow he had. He saw a town, a small town, a town hall, a main street set for a bicentennial celebration, a public pool with kids frozen mid-jump, a school with kids running to get in the front door. And as he watched them go by, he became aware of the words flashing on the screen. The words were almost unseeable, almost too subtle to be seen. But the longer he looked, the better he could make them out. Come back to Cashmere. Cashmere is waiting for you. Won't you come and experience a life lived simply? Cashmere. Ronald had never heard of it, or had he? It sounded familiar, like a place he had heard about on the news. As the picture of the pool filtered by, Ronald could swear that one of those smiling kids was even him. The picture looked like it had been taken in the 80s or the late 70s, so the time frame matched up with his childhood. And as it swam past again, the picture's going by faster and faster now. The blonde kid frozen mid-jump looked more and more like a young Ron. Come home. He sat back, aware suddenly that he was right in front of the TV. It was the kind of thing that he would have yelled at one of the kids for doing. But here he was, sitting right in front of the TV with his nose against the glass. He crawled back to the tubes, leaning in close so he could read the words, but it was hard to see anything as the TV frantically flashed the pictures on the screen. Ronald tried to read the words, but it was hard. His eyes weren't what they used to be, but as the picture of the town hall stopped on the screen, Ron could read the words, "Come home, Ronald." Ron? Ron jumped, scuttling away from the TV like he'd been doing something wrong. "Dinner's ready," she said, raising an eyebrow at him. Are you okay?" "Yeah," Ron said, turning back to see what the TV was doing, but it was once again showing static. "Yeah, I'm okay." "Dinner's ready," she repeated, and Ronald got up and came to the table as Helen called the boys to come eat. Ronald was usually a voracious eater, but he was just picking at his food as the family dug in. The commercial stuck with him, the words seeming to play across his eyes. It had known his name, though there was no way that it could have known his name. Maybe there was a way, though, he thought, as he tried to make himself eat the meatloaf that was in front of him. Hadn't he thought that he'd seen himself in that picture? Hadn't he thought it was weird that he couldn't remember his childhood? He tried until his head hurt, but it didn't seem to do any good. "Ronald, everything okay?" He jumped and looked at Helen. "Sure, yeah, everything's fine. Why do you ask?" "Well, you've barely touched your food. Are you feeling all right?" Ronald looked down and realized that she was right. He'd barely eaten anything, and when he pushed back from the table, they all looked surprised. "Just feeling a little under the weather, I guess. Some indigestion from lunch. Sorry, hon. It does smell good, but my stomach's in an uproar. Helen nodded, sympathetically. No problem, Ron. I'll put it in a Tupperware, in case you get your appetite back. Why don't you go watch a little TV to take your mind off of it? Ron nodded, saying that was just what he would do, and before he knew it, he was in his recliner again, looking through the channels. He didn't have to switch for long before he found the commercial again. It was different this time, though. Now the streets were looking a little less used, the buildings a little less cared for, and the bunting on the bicentennial ornaments was looking old and frayed. When it swapped to the pool was emptied, and there was trash around the pool deck. The school looked dull and empty, the windows watching him like eyes. Cashmere looked different now, much different, and Ronald found himself leaning closer so he could take it all in. As he leaned in, the words began to appear. It's not too late. Come back to Cashmere. You can be happy again, Ronald. Had he been happy there? As he thought about it, he thought he had. Suddenly, he remembered riding his bike up Main Street, his two friends crying out as they tried to keep up. Earl and Woodsy had been his pals, and they had explored the town when they weren't in school. Ronald remembered swimming in the community pool, going to the K-12 school, listening to music at the bandstand, and going on hikes with the scouts. He remembered so much, and it was like a dam had opened. Come home, Ronald. Your friends are still here. Bring your family to Cashmere and see what you've been missing. Ron? He didn't turn this time. Ronald was so enthralled by what he was seeing that all he could do was stare at the TV screen. He remembered. He remembered all of it now. Were his parents still there? Did they miss him? He told people they were dead, but it was only because he couldn't remember them. Maybe he could find them. Maybe he could introduce them to their grandchildren. Maybe he could... Ron, you're scaring me. What's going on? Nothing, dear, he said, turning the TV off with some effort. Just saw something that reminded me of old times. Well, are you ready for bed? She asked, hesitantly. Yeah, he said, getting up. Yeah, I think that might be best. Ronald had hoped that it would ebb away as he settled in for sleep, but when he closed his eyes, all he could see was the flashing pictures of Cashmere and their little travel ad. The pictures mingled together as they flashed by, the words changing as they came. They implored him to come to Cashmere, to return home, to bring his family, to start a new life. He tossed and turned, assaulted by the images as they ran faster and faster. The longer they played, the faster they moved, and soon it was like a movie behind his eyes. He could see the boy version of himself jumping into the pool of screaming children. He could watch as he and Earl ran up the stairs of the school. He could watch the three of them ride their bikes down Main Street, and as he did, he felt comforted in a way that he hadn't in years. As he watched the images flow through his dreams, he knew what he must do. Helen woke up to find her husband's side of the bed empty. Ronald had been acting weird today, and as she crept out of bed, she wondered where she would find him. Had he gotten up to eat some? Maybe he was watching TV in the den. She didn't know, but she was curious. She was afraid that she might discover something terrible, like an affair or something, but as she came into the living room, she saw the TV, and there he was before it again. He was on his knees, watching some commercial, and she felt cold dread wiggle inside of her as she watched him. "Ron?" she half-breathed. He turned away with slow and almost ghoulish stiffness, and his face frightened her. "Don't worry, Henny. I'm okay. I've just been thinking about some things, and I think you might be right." In the light of the TV static, his face looked like a carved wooden mask. "About what?" she asked, her voice coming out stilted. "I think a vacation might be just what we need. A chance to see something that I haven't seen in a long time. Sounds like just what I need." "Okay," she said, inching backwards. Where would you like to go, Ron?" "Here," he said, indicating the television. "I want to go here. Come down here, Helen. Come see what I see, and I think you'll agree." Helen was scared, but she had never denied Ron anything in their 20 years of marriage. She got down beside him, looking at the image on the screen, and the longer she looked, the more she realized he was right. Cashmere was just the place for them. Maybe just the place to start again. They got their kids out of bed and brought them into the den, and before morning they also agreed that it sounded great. By the next day they were gone, just got in their car and drove. They'd packed only the essentials, and when the bank came to repossess the house, they found most of their stuff still there. They would close their accounts out on the way out of town, and before long they were driving onto the main street of Cashmere and smiling at their new home. Cashmere had called to Ron, the native son it had lost, and as he parked in front of the town hall, he felt like he was truly where he belonged.